What's up, Blade fam? Today we're going to be doing 3 tips or 3 things I wish I knew before I started grinds. If you'd like to know what those 3 things are, stay tuned. We're going to get into that. So tip number 1, this really changed the way I look at skating. It's setting up your grinds before you get into them. So what does that mean? What that means is, say this line right here, and I'm about to perform a soul grind. Now, if you skate up to a soul grind and you have your right foot back, as you're approaching, you're somewhat set up for that grind before you get there. But if I perform the same grind, a right-footed soul grind, but this time I skate with my left foot back, that means when I pop, I have to bring that foot from the back to the front, which is going to promote stepping up into grinds. But if I was to do that again with that setting up for that trick, as I'm coming into it, I bring my foot forward, it's set up for that grind. And it's the same thing if you're doing like a Masu. Now if I performed a right-footed Masu and I am right foot back now, I have to bring that foot back. But if I'm skating up to it and I'm already left foot back, you can kind of see how this little setting up takes away an extra movement if you're approaching at the grind the wrong way. So I had a conversation with Frank Stoner. For those of you that don't know who he is, he's a writer and a really OG in skating. He's got a lot of wisdom and knowledge in just how to skate properly. He mentioned to me that we have a switch forward stance. So if you typically skate right foot back as you're pumping through the park, this is your traditional stance or your right stance. But if you switch, now you're skating switch forward. But if you do that, it also helps with the left-footed grinds. So you can see by just setting up before you get into a grind, whether it's a boot trick, a soul trick, topside trick, having your feet staggered as in the position that you're going to jump up and lock with will take away that extra movement, which if that extra movement comes in, it does create another point or a secondary balance point, because you're jumping up and you have this outward carve going into the rail or obstacle, causing you to probably go over. But if you're here staggered and you pop straight up, locked down, money, baby. So tip number 2 is knowing how to jump up and above your obstacle and not really chopping at. Now this is specifically geared towards top sides, but when I started to think about how I'm supposed to jump up rather than just jumping up, it changed my ability to do switch and regular top sides. What that technique is understanding that when you're jumping into a grind, if you need a further analysis of this, check out my how to do topsides video, and I go in depth on this topic, but it needs to be said. So when I jump at an obstacle, a beginner learns to do soul tricks first. So they become associated with the outside edge of their skate, this soul plate. As they are practicing soul grinds, they continue doing this type of jump. But then when you start doing top sides, that changes everything, because now you are thinking soul grind in a topside manner rather than thinking of the frame. And when you start thinking of the frame rather than the soul plate, it changes the way you look at your blade and it changes the way you jump. So instead of jumping at the obstacle, I learned to jump up and onto the obstacle. So think of this motion when you're setting up for grinds. Your feet are staggered in the position it needs to be in prior to getting to that obstacle. You jump at an angle and land directly on top. You can see that when I'm skating this ledge here, that I hop just slightly above the obstacle and I drop my fish brain on top of it. That trick specifically, if you start or learn from chopping into that trick, you also learned how hard that fall can be, or in topsouls, anytime you're doing this chopping motion. So when I discovered how to jump properly into these tricks, it changed everything on those tricks. Number 2. Okay, and last but not least, tip number 3. This one is kind of abstract, I guess. I don't know if that's the word. Okay, so we skate with our feet, but we do have arms and hands, and when we use these to set up our tricks, it changes a lot in those tricks. Like take this negative, for example. As I'm approaching my obstacle, you'll notice that I create a counter measure in my upper half as I'm leading into this obstacle. I shift my hands this way so that when I jump, my feet follow in, and then I can pull my arms out again or stabilize. So going into a negative Machio, I set up that trick in a way, if this line was that obstacle, as I'm approaching, I'm pulling this away so that when I jump, my arms are here, my hands are here, which will create the momentum with my feet to go there and my hands to stabilize and go up. So it's creating this counter momentum or a counter measure in your grinds, and it can be in every grind, from boot tricks to top sides, and this really, I think, unlocks switch ups and budgets and hurricanes and things of that nature, is knowing how to set up before you get into the trick. So there's the staggering of the feet, there's the proper pop and land, and then there's the things going on with our arms or our upper half, like negative acid. You know, that trick, when I first saw it performed, it was like, nope, I will never, kind of just chalked it out. You know, back then our negatives were really small. I was on Solomon's, and it was just like, nope, I will never learn that trick. And I kind of believed that and just let it go. But when I came back into inline skating, it was like, you know what, I really want to learn these. I'm gonna figure it out. And what I figured out was, specifically, negatives is more about understanding how to create this counter movement with our upper half to direct the lower half where we want to be. Using our hands and our arms when we're performing grinds as a means of like getting into the obstacle. When you're skating really high rails, that's part of the trick, is knowing that in order for me to land on this rail properly, both of my arms have to be extended. So again, if this line or this crack was that rail, as I'm jumping, I know both of my hands have to be out and over my obstacle as I'm jumping. So you're kind of creating this invisible line with your hands as you're jumping up. Your legs come up into the grind, you land in and settle down. Think about where your hands need to be. Watch some VODs, watch some skate videos, find some other inline skaters that you can model, and notice where their arms are. You know, some of the greats, Rob G, oh my God, that man's hands are up all the time. Like, that is Rob, everybody knows Rob G's stance is completely free and flying, open-hearted. He knows he's the man. You know, it's in everybody that's performing at that level. You just take note of these things, and these small things, if you apply them in the beginning of your skating, will change everything. That's gonna put a close to today's video. Thank you guys so much for taking the time and watching. I hope these 3 things will help you grow in your skating as much as it has helped me. You know, that's all I'm trying to do, is provide value to our community. Again, thank you guys for all the love and support. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and maybe that little notification bell. That'll keep you updated with all the videos that I put out. Till next time, keep the blade alive. Aloha.